Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a review over the book The Pureblood Society by Kristen Bowens. I was given a copy of this by the author, who is a friend of mine. The book follows Lillian and Xavier, specifically a human and vampire, who are drawn to each other in this book, as it involves a society of humans and vampires and the, I guess you could say, arrangements they have with one another. Lillian is, understandably not very happy with this society in regards to how the humans make treaties with the vampires, or specific, the arrangements that they have in regards to getting whatever desires they can from the vampires, or the nomads as they're called. The story is more so about like Lillian dealing with like the magic of the society. She wants to escape it. She doesn't want any part of it. She just wants to live her own life away from all these dealings between humans and vampires, or specifically the human parents, in regards to like what they can get from the vampires by giving their children to the vampires, and as she believes, not caring what happens. Though with Xavier, he has like changed parts of like what the arrangements could include. This like the relationship between like Lillian and Xavier sort of kind of reminded me of like that. I guess you could say like imprinting. I can't remember exactly what it was called because I'm not really a fan of the franchise and series, but like that thing where the shapeshifters in Twilight, like I guess you could say, connect to the person that they will like fall in love with and everything. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but that's sort of what it kind of reminded me of, this like relationship between and bond or connection between Lillian and Xavier. Lillian, she is both enthralled by and also sort of disgusted by at least some vampires at some points, because of like their interactions with the humans and how they see them and everything. One part I think that was really well done within this is that vampires, as in lore and in this book, like there's like some kind of like a supernatural like allure and attraction to them. Like I think it's put like at one point like perfect but deadly. I mean, it fits well like how the vampires are like perceived by humans and other vampires. Like they matter of like them having this like incredible allure and attraction about them, like this feeling and energy that they have. The vampire nature within this, it was some things I was surprised by, like the matter of like the eye color representing certain things, which like Xavier and his father having purple eyes as being status of like the most powerful and royal vampires, and you have blue, green, and then red at the bottom, which, as it was ironically put, because that's the most common eye color you usually connect with vampires. But one thing I gotta say though, as it's mentioned in this point, like vampire hierarchy and like leaders are usually led by I guess to say the most powerful rather than the oldest or something. Though I would think, I guess it's here it's a bit different. I guess because everyone has a different perception of vampires, because the lore varies and you can have different interpretations of it, both in reality and in fiction, which is the case here. As in, well, Xavier isn't the oldest vampire; he's the most powerful, as in bordering or into like I guess you could say like anime levels, with like him apparently slowing down time at one point, which I was not really shocked by, because I don't even know like that's been done in anime, but I don't usually watch anime very much. But it was definitely surprising to see he had that level of power. This Delante line or bloodline having more power and energy to it. The origins of vampires weren't really explained in this. There were like hints to like vampire history here and there, which I'm guessing will be explored in more books, because this book ends with like basically to be continued, and also matters of like how vampires turn. Like a human has to consume a certain amount of blood to be able to be turned into one. So, but also a certain amount of blood can like help humans heal, which I think, as in the lore, like it varies with like what vampire blood can do for humans. Like sometimes it turns humans, sometimes it heals humans. So I guess that difference in like the amount of blood is understandable. I will say I was a bit saddened that more, I guess you could say, self-loathing vampire was the lead male character, the leading vampire character. I think like it's been like pointed out, like it's been done a couple of parts of this book, like certain vampires see humans as lesser than, which is usually common through fiction, that vampires see humans as a lower species. And it's sort of, I find it kind of ironic that as humans we see animals as lower species because they're not human. They don't think and feel the same ways we do. And yet, ironically, with vampires, they think and feel and experience in ways that humans can't comprehend. I'm not saying it's justified for certain species to see another species as lesser than. It's just I find that terrible and curious irony is all. Also, because like the self-loathing vampire is often done like them like lifting up like humans as being perfect and everything in vampires as the worst of the worst, which wasn't exactly what was done here. It's just that Xavier obviously saw value in humans, which isn't a bad thing. It's just he brought up like this peaceful like front, like some of the things like he's willing or will be willing to do is also I still find kind of unnerving. Like him willing to wipe out like the whole Herald clan was disturbing for the actions of some. I mean, he said like all of them were a certain way, but whether human or vampire, we're individuals. We all maybe have similarities to like other people and like family or others, in our species or just a immediate family maybe, but we're individuals. Each of us has something that makes us different from others, even with similarities. And I find like the whole idea of like wiping out a whole family or clan is still kind of disturbing just for the actions of just a few. Though I guess that's probably like the maybe the Julian and Xavier, his father's like influence. I mean, it's been mentioned. Well, Xavier obviously isn't like his father. He doesn't have his violent tendencies. There's still the fury there, but I think it still like shows like some similarities there with his father, that if like certain thing is done, he'll willingly like and enjoy like certain violent actions. I mean, like the idea of wiping out a whole clan or family is still kind of like I said, it's still disturbing. The whole thing with like Felsen like saying and believing humans as a lesser species obviously is great. I hope like it's just like like something that he got that like from just his father or something, because his father and him obviously don't like or respect Xavier. They don't like or really respect humans, as we can see with Felsen, like his first interaction with like technically I guess you could say his second like interaction with Lillian, him having that he's basically like a rapist in that scene, because he gets off on power and everything. It's not about like maybe the act of like of drinking blood. It's just like the power he has like over her, even though he is unable to like get what he wants. But I'm just hoping like the rest of his clan are not like Felsen and his father, because I know some people won't care or maybe like it because like the whole idea of like wiping out vampires or a large number of vampires is good. I used to be of that mind, but I guess maybe I saw it in different ways and maybe read stories and saw certain things. The whole idea of like wiping out a large group of people or species, it doesn't appeal to me, which is another terrible irony that I'll get into a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, power levels, they seem like inconsistent or in flux at times. Like Xavier, he presents himself as the most powerful vampire, but he cannot like hold, but it seemingly has to use more force to hold like a human down when she's like weakened. I mean, I kind of found that like uncertain, because I don't think he would even need to use even like a fraction of his power or strength to like hold down a human, even like the strongest human. Like it shouldn't be even a match for like the weakest vampire. I don't know, maybe it was like the idea of maybe he wasn't trying to hurt her or something, or just trying to keep her in a position to where maybe he wouldn't like maybe lose his grip or something. I don't know. It was just at certain points like the power levels, like I said, are inconsistent. Like when Mason like he enters Xavier's home at one point, he's able to like overpower a vampire guard in human form, but yet he at certain points feels like vampire power levels are different, because I know while Mason is a werewolf, usually in like fiction, werewolves in human form, even if they're like stronger than normal humans, they're still not able to like match up with vampires. So they might be able to like hold their own for maybe a little bit or something. They usually aren't able to overpower a vampire until they're one of their wolf forms. So I mean, it was I guess because the vampire was like younger and Mason is like maybe stronger than usual werewolf. I guess that's the case here. So I'm kind of uncertain at some points, but I'm not saying this was like the fault of the writer. That trying to keep track of everything and try to make action and drama interesting. Maybe have to experiment a little. I was just like surprised at certain points of like the it's like the power levels of like vampires and werewolves and humans at certain points. As for the most part, it's usually consistent. Just as some moments surprise me. Lillian, she was like, understandable character, like being forced into this position, all her life. I mean, promised or like hoped to be like arranged for certain things that obviously make one, resentful, terrified, and everything. Though, even though she, like at various points she like reacts to like certain vampire characters in different ways. I mean, she might show disgust or fear or like uncertainty or friendliness. While she like said like they were monsters at certain like different points, she doesn't always like maybe see some that way. I don't know. Maybe it's like the individual perception rather than the species. Even though she has said like the whole group of them are monsters, but maybe this was her like growing or developing as a character throughout the story. But maybe it's like her like building relationship with the characters, because usually in these because like a lot of time in fiction in regards to human vampire relationships, if the human character hates vampires, they'll usually treat in these situations the human character might usually treat vampires with disgust or disrespect. But I think in some ways, the author was trying to do things a little differently here, try to like explore and like create a new way of thinking and like action in regards to like interspecies relationships. The story with Mason wasn't as in depth with like Xavier and Liliana. Understandably, he wasn't like he was more of a major side character, turn more major character like later on. But like obviously the main focus of the story was Liliana and Xavier. Though we did get like hints of like Mason's true self like at different points, or like references to it, like the whole guard dog thing and like his father being said being to be mutilated, even though it wasn't Mason who did that. But I will be honest and say, there's a few things I was disappointed by with the werewolves in this. Sometimes in fiction, though it's not very common, unfortunately, that werewolves usually have like a strong bond with one another, a strong mutual respect and compassion for each other, like the whole like pack matter. Pack means family, family means pack, and werewolves, maybe even if they're not related, maybe would have like a common or mutual respect and understanding with one another, that they would like see each other as as kin. Sadly, wasn't the case here, specifically with like Mason's uncle Thomas, who wanted to like take over like the leadership of the werewolves, and like that resulting like battle between Thomas and his brother. But considering how like in some ways the author was trying to like present maybe vampires or individual vampires in like a different way in some ways, I was kind of sad to see that the werewolves didn't have like that sense of like familial and like species like connection and respect. Though obviously everyone has it, like with vampires, werewolves are perceived in different ways because the lore varies and people have different perceptions, interpretations of the lore. And in fiction, there are some similarities between vampires and werewolves in this book, because Xavier and Mason in their own ways like say like how Xavier and like Mason's father like changed both their species in ways that like very differently from how their peoples were in the past. And I'm not exactly what to sure to say about that. I mean, humans haven't exactly been the most peaceful species on the planet, and in Earth's history, we have done like all kinds of horrible things, and maybe it's that part of like that similarity to humans that is in the case here. But people say like the whole matter of like they say like power corrupts, and I guess maybe that's the case here with both species of vampires and werewolves, like having a greater power, and that maybe helps present like maybe corrupt certain individuals. Understandably, this book was more focused on the vampires and humans, so the werewolves didn't get as much like characterization and depth as the vampires did. Though there were like hints at the vampire lore and history wasn't fully explored, like the like it was mentioned like the Great War, like or how a Great War like wiped out a lot of the Delante line. So I'm guessing that will be explored more in another book or two, and how it was put the hunt where vampires led by apparently Julian of all people, which I'll get into in a sec, like led the hunt for werewolves to be killed off, because he, as Xavier mentioned, that Julian said like vampires like should rule over all other species. But I will say I'm also, kind of saddened to see like the whole werewolf versus vampire trope in here. I mean, I know that's common, and I used to like that as well, but I guess like instead of like two similar species like being allies and friends, it's like the whole, I guess you could say, like competition and like blood feud between certain species. Like it's a common trope, and it's understandable why it was used. I mean, it's, I guess you could say, tried and true, and it's a popular trope because people still debate whether who will win a fight, werewolf or vampire. That goes on and on. But and I'm not like saying I'm not disappointed in the sense like with the author. It's just it's like a trope that, like I said, it's been used, and like you can explore like different things, what why the species hate each other, and how this like conflict can come into different things, because like conflict and like and turmoil can creates you can create interesting and complex action in like the matter of two powerful species at war with one another can create interesting conflict and action. And that's the whole conflict thing. The whole like werewolf power level, as I sort of mentioned earlier, with power levels, it seemed kind of inconsistent. Like certain werewolves might be more powerful than certain vampires in like certain situations, but I was kind of confused at certain points because I could stomach Xavier being able to pin even up maybe partially transformed Mason against the wall, but I'm considering how in some ways the werewolves were described, I would figure, especially based off how big Mason was in his like full wolf or wolf human amalgamation form. I don't know. I mean, maybe not even Xavier would be able to stand up to him, but I don't know. That's just one nitpick here, I guess. And there's one question: why and how the hell are Thomas and Julian working together? Julian instigated the hunt for werewolves. Wouldn't Thomas like recognize Julian's scent and hate him for it? I mean, Julian saved his life, but wouldn't even maybe a dying werewolf in this like lore and everything especially hate the vampire responsible for hunting his species? Because I doubt like Julian like changed his mind about werewolves. I imagine he's trying to use Thomas for his own ends. But I'm still surprised like Thomas would even like accept and be willing to help Julian. I mean, this is conflict to be explored later in another book or two, or depending how long the author plans to make this series. But I don't know, that just really surprised me. There's more to explore with the books, maybe to go more in depth with it. It's just really surprising that these two, who more than likely like want to kill each other, are really working together. I'm just really surprised and like worried at the reasoning behind that. The Pureblood Society was an interesting book. The characters and the storylines that went through it were still to be explored, and I think there's more to see as the series goes on. This is still a new book, and for those fans of vampires and werewolves, more specifically vampires, and like the newer interpretations and everything, should really get this book. Hope you all like this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be trying to come out with more videos as soon as I can. Once again, I hope you like this video, and thank you for watching.